Naomi Walker had perfected the art of becoming invisible. She'd chosen the middle seat on Flight 447, the red-eye to London, her worn-out hoodie pulled low over eyes that hadn't truly slept in 5 years. To the chattering grandmother beside her and the stressed-out businessman typing furiously on her other side, she was a nobody, just another exhausted traveler trying to disappear into the anonymous hum of economy class. But when the captain's voice cracked over the intercom with barely controlled panic, when an unidentified aircraft began stalking them through the night sky like a predator sizing up its prey, and when that dreaded question echoed through the cabin, "Is there any fighter pilot on board?" 200 passengers were about to discover that the woman they'd barely noticed was their only hope for survival. The evening sun painted long shadows across the tarmac at JFK International as passengers boarded Flight 447. Among the steady stream of travelers, Naomi Walker moved with a deliberate, practiced slowness. Her faded jeans and an oversized Northwestern University hoodie helped her melt into the crowd. At 35, she carried herself with a strange contradiction. Shoulders that wanted to snap to attention, but were forced to slouch, and eyes that scanned the boarding area with tactical precision before deliberately unfocusing. "Welcome aboard," the gate agent said cheerfully, scanning her boarding pass. Naomi offered a tired smile that didn't reach her eyes and made her way down the jet bridge. The aircraft hummed with the energy of pre-flight anticipation. Business travelers stowed their laptops with practiced efficiency. Families negotiated who got the window seat. Flight attendants moved through their preparations with choreographed grace. Naomi found her seat, 32B, a middle seat, and settled in without complaint. Most people would have grimaced, but she seemed almost relieved to disappear between two other people. To her left, by the window, sat Margaret Foster, a chatty woman in her late 60s, wearing a bit too much perfume and clutching a romance novel. To her right on the aisle, a businessman named David Brooks was already hammering away at his laptop, his jaw clenched with the kind of tension that said this flight was just one stop in an endless cycle of meetings and deadlines. "First time to London, dear?" Margaret asked, leaning into Naomi's space with the enthusiasm of someone who saw airplanes as social mixers. "No, ma'am," Naomi replied softly, pulling her hood up and closing her eyes. "Just tired." Margaret's face fell slightly, but she recovered quickly, turning to her book with a small huff. Naomi had perfected the art of polite dismissal, friendly enough not to offend, distant enough to discourage conversation. 3 rows ahead, a family was settling in with the controlled chaos that comes with traveling with kids. The Andersons, Tom and Sarah, with their 8-year-old twins, Emma and Jacob, were in the middle of intense negotiations over the window seat. Sarah caught the eye of a flight attendant, offering an apologetic smile that said, "We'll try to keep them quiet." But no promises. The flight attendants, Jennifer Martinez and Robert Hayes, exchanged a quick glance as they counted passengers. They'd both noticed a group of 4 soldiers in uniform boarding earlier, heading home from a deployment. The men looked exhausted, their 1,000-yard stares suggesting they'd seen more than they cared to remember. One of them, Sergeant Marcus Williams, kept bouncing his leg, checking his phone with nervous energy. But it wasn't the soldiers that had caught Jennifer's eye. It was the man in 38F. He had his hood pulled low despite the warm cabin and wore oversized sunglasses, even though they'd been inside for 20 minutes. His carry-on bag had seemed unusually heavy when he lifted it into the overhead bin, the muscles in his arms straining more than they should for a simple backpack. Captain James Reynolds emerged from the cockpit, his silver hair and weathered face a testament to decades of experience. At 58, he'd flown through everything from volcanic ash clouds to hurricane evacuations. But tonight, something felt off. Maybe it was the weather reports showing clear skies that didn't match the unease in his gut. "Good evening, folks." His voice came over the intercom, warm and reassuring, with that particular pilot's drawl that suggests everything is under control. "This is your captain speaking. We're looking at a smooth flight to London tonight, about 7 hours and 20 minutes in the air. Sit back, relax, and let us take care of you." But even as he spoke, his co-pilot, First Officer Alan Peterson, was frowning at his radar screen. "Jim, you seeing this?" Reynolds leaned over. "What am I looking at?" Probably nothing. Just thought I saw something at our 7 o'clock, about 40 miles out. Moving fast. It's gone now. Keep an eye on it," Reynolds said, his voice casual. No need to worry about phantoms on the radar. Not yet. Back in 32B, Naomi had already drifted off, or at least appeared to. Her breathing was steady, but it wasn't the deep rhythm of true sleep. Her fingers, tucked inside her hoodie pocket, occasionally twitched. Muscle memory from years of gripping something that wasn't there anymore. The plane pushed back from the gate. The safety demonstration played on the screens, ignored by most. It was during the taxi to the runway that the first unusual thing happened. A loud thud echoed from the cargo hold, sharp enough to make several passengers look up. Jennifer, the lead flight attendant, grabbed the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, that was just some cargo shifting. Nothing to worry about." But she exchanged another look with Robert. Cargo didn't shift like that. Not with that kind of impact. The man in 38F, whose boarding pass read Michael Smith, shifted in his seat. His hands, steady until now, showed the slightest tremor. He pulled his bag down from the overhead, placing it under the seat in front of him. As the plane lined up for takeoff, the engines roared to life, pressing everyone back into their seats. The nose lifted, and they were airborne, New York falling away beneath them in a glittering sprawl of lights. For the first hour, everything was normal. But Naomi wasn't sleeping. Behind her closed lids, her mind was running through calculations she hadn't made in years. Angle of climb, engine performance, subtle shifts in heading, old habits. In her half-conscious state, memories flickered. The weight of a flight helmet, the rush of G-forces, the voice of her wingman through the radio static. She pushed them down. That was another life. In the cockpit, Peterson frowned again. "Jim, I'm getting that reading again. Stronger this time." "How far?" 20 miles and closing. Speed doesn't match any commercial traffic. Could be military." Then, the turbulence hit. It wasn't a gentle rocking. This was a sudden, violent jolt, throwing the aircraft sideways. Drinks spilled. A tablet went flying. Emma Anderson let out a frightened cry. Naomi's eyes snapped open. Her body instinctively adjusted, her feet finding purchase, her hands gripping the armrests. Not in panic, but with controlled pressure. Margaret Foster, who had grabbed Naomi's arm in fear, noticed the younger woman wasn't even breathing hard. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom, a new strain in his tone. "We're experiencing some unexpected turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seat belts." But Reynolds knew this wasn't turbulence. The weather radar was clear. Something else had caused that jolt. Something external. In seat 38F, Michael Smith was gripping his seat, muttering something under his breath in a language that wasn't English. "It's too early," he whispered to himself. "They weren't supposed to." 10-year-old Jacob Anderson was pressed against the window. "Mom," he said, tugging on his mother's sleeve, "there's another plane out there. It's really, really close." Tom Anderson leaned over to look. For a moment he saw nothing, then a dark shape against the darker sky, just a few hundred yards away. It was gone before he could fully process it. Naomi had heard the boy. She shifted slightly, her trained eyes picking up the faint reflection of navigation lights that shouldn't be there, moving in a pattern that didn't match any standard flight path. The plane jolted again, this time with a strange rolling motion. Wake vortex, the disturbed air left behind by another aircraft. but no plane should be close enough for them to hit its wake. Not here. Jennifer, the flight attendant, unbuckled and made her way to the cockpit. She knocked the code for urgent, but not emergency. Reynolds opened the door. "We're being shadowed," he said quietly, before she could even speak. "An aircraft is following us, not responding to any comms." Just then, the plane lurched again, harder this time. Oxygen masks dropped from several compartments, dangling uselessly. Gasps filled the cabin. Someone started crying. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice came again, the strain now obvious. "We're experiencing some technical irregularities." But Naomi heard what he wasn't saying. Technical irregularities was pilot speak for evasive maneuvers. Whatever was following them was getting more aggressive. The man, in 38F, Michael Smith, suddenly stood up and headed for the lavatory. Jennifer moved to stop him, but he locked himself inside before she could. She pressed her ear to the door and heard him talking. No, arguing with someone. He was on a phone or a radio. In the cockpit, Peterson was getting agitated. "Jim, it's matching our every move. We're being hunted." Then, a voice broke through the static on their radio. It wasn't air traffic control. It was accented. "Flight 447. Maintain current heading and altitude. Comply and no one will be harmed." This had just gone from suspicious to hostile. Back in the cabin, Naomi opened her eyes fully. The pretense was over. Margaret Foster, clutching her romance novel like a lifeline, whispered, "You're not really just tired, are you, dear?" Naomi turned to her, and Margaret saw something in her eyes that took her breath away. A depth of capability that had nothing to do with attending a conference. "Ma'am," Naomi said quietly, "in a few minutes things might get complicated. When they do, keep your head down and follow the crew's instructions. Can you do that for me?" Margaret nodded, suddenly very aware that the tired young woman in the middle seat might be the most important person on this plane. The lavatory door opened, and the man emerged, his face pale. He looked around wildly, then his eyes locked on Naomi. Recognition flickered across his features, not of her, but of what she was. The way she sat, the way she watched him, the controlled readiness in her posture. "You don't understand," the man stammered, his accent now clear, Eastern European. "They're coming. They want the package." That's when the plane shuddered again. This time, everyone heard the sound. A high-pitched whine, followed by a flash of light outside the windows. The shadowing aircraft had just fired a flare across their nose. A warning shot. The cabin erupted, screams crying prayers. And in seat 32B, Naomi Walker unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. The mask was off. Underneath was someone who had once been Lieutenant Colonel Naomi Walker, one of the Air Force's most decorated fighter pilots, before she disappeared from service under classified circumstances. Her voice cut through the panic with military authority. "Everyone, remain calm and seated. Flight crew, initiate emergency protocols." The cabin fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Captain Reynolds, watching from the cockpit door, felt a dizzying mix of relief and apprehension. Help had just arrived from the most unexpected place imaginable. The only question was, would it be enough? The silence that followed Naomi's command felt like an eternity. Captain Reynolds rushed down the aisle. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, "I don't know who you are, but if you have any experience that might help." "Lieutenant Colonel Naomi Walker," she said, her voice steady. "Former F-22 pilot, 94th Fighter Squadron. And right now, Captain, you need to tell me everything." Reynolds' eyes widened. He'd heard the name. A ghost story pilots told in airport bars. The pilot who vanished after a classified incident. "We've got an unidentified aircraft shadowing us," he said quickly. "They've cut us off from air traffic control. Jamming, maybe, and they just fired a warning shot. Show me your radar." she said, already moving toward the cockpit. To the cabin, she commanded, "Everyone stay seated. Flight attendants, prepare for possible evasive maneuvers." As they reached the cockpit, Reynolds hesitated. "Your service record. Can I trust you?" "Captain," Naomi said, her voice urgent. "In about 30 seconds, that aircraft is going to make another pass. They're testing you. Right now, I'm the only person on this plane who has any chance of figuring out what they want. You can question my past later. Right now, you need my help." He opened the door. First Officer Peterson looked up, shocked. "Jim, what the hell?" "She's a fighter pilot," Reynolds said. "Show her the radar." Naomi leaned over the instruments, her eyes scanning the displays. "There," she pointed. "See how they're holding position just outside your collision avoidance range? This is military training." The radio crackled to life again, the same accented voice. "Flight 447. Begin descent to flight level 180. You have 2 minutes to comply." "If we descend to 18,000 feet, Peterson began. "We'll be in perfect position for a forced landing," Naomi finished. "Or low enough for a mid-air boarding, if they're really ambitious." Reynolds stared at her. "Mid-air boarding? That's impossible." "It's been done," Naomi said grimly. "Twice that I know of. Both times with inside help." Her eyes narrowed. "That passenger in 38F. He knows something." Naomi made her way back through the cabin, projecting a calm she didn't feel. She knelt in the aisle beside the hooded man. "I know you're scared," she said, her voice low. "But if you don't tell me what's going on, everyone on this plane is going to pay the price for what you're carrying." The man's head snapped up. "You don't understand!" "What is it?" Naomi pressed. "What are you carrying?" He clutched his bag. "Codes," he whispered. "Satellite override codes. Someone leaked the handoff. They're here to take them." Naomi's blood ran cold. In the wrong hands, those codes could cause catastrophic damage, even start a war. "Who are they?" "Mercenaries. Former military. They call themselves the Grey Wing. Their leader." He stopped, his face paling even further. "They say he was one of the best pilots the American Air Force ever trained, before he went rogue. They call him Spectre." Naomi felt the world tilt. Spectre. She knew that call sign. She knew it because she had flown with him for 3 years. Marcus Webb, her former wingman. The man who had been by her side until the final, fatal operation that had ended her career, and apparently begun his. The situation was far worse than she'd imagined. Marcus knew her tactics, her thinking, her weaknesses. The plane lurched again, harder this time. Through the windows, passengers could see the hostile jet pulling alongside, close enough to make out its dark, menacing silhouette against the stars. Screams erupted. Naomi raced back to the cockpit, just as Reynolds was coming out. "They're right beside us," he said, his calm finally cracking. "Let me talk to them," Naomi said. "They're not responding." "They'll respond to me." She grabbed the radio, switched to the emergency guard frequency, and spoke, her voice clear and cold. "Grey Wing Flight, this is Lieutenant Colonel Naomi Walker. I know you're listening. Marcus, let's talk." For a long moment, there was only static. Then, a voice she hadn't heard in 5 years. Rougher now, but unmistakably his. "Well, well, Vixen herself. I wondered if you were on board when I saw the passenger manifest. Naomi Walker, flying commercial. How the mighty have fallen. Marcus, whatever you're being paid, it's not worth this," Naomi said, her voice steady. Who said anything about killing anyone?" he replied, his tone laced with that old, familiar cockiness. "We just want what your friend in 38F is carrying. Hand it over, and everyone goes home safe." "You know I can't do that." "You mean you won't? Still playing by the rules even after they threw you away?" The words hit their mark, but she didn't flinch. This isn't about me or you or what happened 5 years ago. This is about 200 innocent people. Everything is about what happened 5 years ago, Naomi. That's when we both learned what the rules are really worth. The hostile jet outside pulled even closer. Marcus, pull back, Naomi commanded. You're endangering everyone. Negative, Vixen. You have something we need. Cooperate or things get uncomfortable. Naomi looked at Reynolds. How much fuel? Enough for London with standard reserves. But if we start maneuvering, we won't last long, she finished. And he knows it. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the cabin. A woman who had been sitting quietly 2 rows behind Naomi's original seat was moving toward the mid-cabin door, a sharpened piece of metal in her hand. "Nobody move!" she shouted, her accent matching the man in 38F. "Give me the codes, and I open the door," she yelled. "They board, take what they want, and leave." "You open that door at this altitude, and everyone dies," Naomi countered. "Not if we descend first. Tell the captain to take us to 10,000 feet. So that was the plan. An accomplice on the inside. You're assuming they'll keep their word, Naomi said, taking a slow step toward the woman. You don't know Marcus Webb like I do. Stay back. He's going to kill everyone anyway, Naomi continued, her voice filled with a chilling certainty. Because that's what he does now. That's what he became. After I failed to stop him the first time, the confession hung in the air. 5 years ago, Naomi said, her voice dropping. Marcus and I were on a mission. Off the books. We were supposed to destroy a terrorist camp, but the intel was wrong. It was a refugee camp. Families, children. I refused to engage. Marcus didn't. The woman's hand was shaking now. I tried to stop him, Naomi said. I damaged his aircraft, forced him to abort, but not before he dropped his ordnance. 17 civilians died. The Air Force buried it, discharged me for insubordination, and Marcus disappeared. I thought he was in prison. I was wrong. She was close enough now. In one fluid motion, she disarmed the woman. The ex-cop, Crawford, was there in a second, restraining her. Naomi grabbed the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation is under control. Please remain calm. But it was far from over. Marcus's voice filled the cabin through the open cockpit door. Nice work, Vixen. You always were good at close quarters. But this isn't close quarters anymore. You're in a flying brick, and I'm in a fighter. Last chance. Give me the codes, or I start putting holes in your fuselage. He's bluffing, Naomi said, rushing into the cockpit. He won't risk destroying the codes. Before she could finish, a bright flash streaked past the aircraft, close enough for them to hear the sonic crack of its passage. That wasn't a bluff, Peterson said, his voice tight with fear. Naomi grabbed the radio. Marcus, you fire on this aircraft, and those codes are gone forever. Victor has a dead man's switch. Anything happens to us, the codes self-destruct. It was a lie, but a necessary one. You're lying, Marcus said, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his voice now. Am I? You know me, Marcus. You taught me to always have a backup plan. There was silence on the radio. The hostile aircraft pulled back slightly. You've got 1 hour, Naomi, Marcus finally said. 1 hour to convince me why I shouldn't just take what I want. And trust me, after what you cost me 5 years ago, I'm very motivated to see this end badly for you. The radio went silent. Naomi turned to Reynolds. We bought time, but not much. Just then, a new voice crackled through the static on a military frequency. Lieutenant Colonel Walker, this is Rampart Actual. We've been monitoring your situation. Help is en route, but you need to buy us 30 minutes. Can you do that? It was Colonel Harrison, her old CO. 30 minutes, against Marcus Webb, who knew all her tricks. Roger, Rampart, she said. We'll buy you 30 minutes. She looked at Reynolds and Peterson. Gentlemen, she said, a grim smile on her face. We're about to do some flying that your manual definitely does not cover. The 30-minute countdown had begun. Captain, I need you to gradually increase altitude, Naomi said to Reynolds. Make it look like we're struggling with the controls. That'll burn more fuel, Peterson protested. It'll also force Marcus to burn his, Naomi replied. He's not in a long-range aircraft. His fuel has to be getting critical. As Reynolds began the maneuver, the plane suddenly lurched. Through the starboard windows, passengers screamed as a second hostile jet rose from the cloud layer below, like a shark from dark waters. Where the hell did that come from? Reynolds' voice crackled over the intercom. Grey Wing 2 is in position. A new cold voice announced over the radio. You now have hostile aircraft on both flanks. Compliance is your only option. Marcus had a backup. Of course he did. You taught me about force multiplication, remember? His voice taunted. Always have superior numbers. 20 minutes until help arrived. The math wasn't on their side. Naomi studied the second jet. It flew differently, more mechanically. The pilot was good, but not exceptional like Marcus. A plan began to form. She took the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, in approximately 30 seconds, I need everyone to brace for impact. This is a precautionary measure. Panic rippled through the cabin, but the crew and the soldiers helped get everyone into brace positions. What are you doing? Reynolds asked nervously. Creating chaos, Naomi replied. She grabbed the radio. Marcus, we have a problem! We're losing hydraulic pressure! It was a lie, but she sold it with just enough panic in her voice. Then to Reynolds. Now, speed brakes and gear, full deployment! Reynolds yanked the levers. The massive 777 shuddered violently as a wall of drag slammed into it. Its speed plummeted instantly. The two hostile jets, caught completely by surprise, shot past them. Marcus's jet immediately went into a hard high G turn to circle back. But the second jet's reaction was slower, clumsier. The pilot overcorrected, nearly stalling. Gear up! Brakes in! Full power! Naomi ordered. The 777's engines roared. They had lost altitude, but they had bought precious minutes. That was insane, Peterson said, his hands shaking. That was just the beginning, Naomi replied. Marcus was coming back, and he was furious. Very clever, Vixen. His voice exploded over the radio. But that little stunt just cost you altitude and fuel. You'll be swimming soon. He was right. They were lower, slower, and burning fuel at an alarming rate. But Naomi had learned something vital. The second pilot was a weak link. Victor, she called into the cabin. How much longer on those codes? 5 minutes, he yelled back. 5 minutes. They were still 15 minutes from help. Marcus's voice was cold. 10 minutes, Vixen. Transfer the codes, or I make this very simple. That's when she saw them. On the horizon, barely visible in the pre-dawn light, were two distinct contrails. Fast movers coming in hot. The cavalry was early. They're going supersonic, Naomi realized, a wave of relief washing over her. Marcus saw them too. He moved his jet directly in front of them, lining up a shot on the cockpit. You fire on us and those jets will splash you, Naomi warned. Maybe, but you'll already be dead. In the cabin, Victor suddenly closed his tablet. Done, he announced. The codes are corrupted! Naomi had one last card to play. She patched herself into the cabin speakers. Marcus Webb, she said, her voice carrying through both the radio and the plane. This is your former commanding officer speaking. I'm giving you one chance to break off. That man who made a terrible mistake in Afghanistan can be redeemed. You can't bring back the 17 lives you took, but you can choose to save the 200 on this plane." The cabin was dead silent. The incoming fighters were now clearly visible, just minutes out. "You really believe that redemption garbage?" Marcus asked, and for the first time, there was something other than anger in his voice. "Pain, maybe. I have to," Naomi replied. "Otherwise, what was it all for?" Then, a new voice cut through the static, older, with a Texas drawl. "Spectre, this is Longhorn. Stand down, son. It's over." Colonel Harrison, her old CO, was in one of those jets. "Stand down, Major Webb," Harrison ordered. "That's a direct order." Naomi held her breath. The entire aircraft seemed to hold its breath. Marcus's jet held its position for an endless, agonizing moment. Then slowly, it peeled away. Not aggressively, just a gentle bank to the left, losing altitude. "Greywing 2, disengage," Marcus said, his voice tired, defeated. "Mission abort." The second jet dove toward the clouds and vanished. Marcus's jet circled them once, then waggled its wings. Not a threat this time. A farewell. "Naomi," his voice came one last time, on a private frequency only she would recognize. "I'm sorry. For all of it." Before she could respond, his aircraft rolled inverted and dove, disappearing into the clouds below, heading toward Island and the justice that awaited him. The cabin erupted, not in cheers but in a collective, shuddering release of tension. People sobbed, laughed, prayed, and held each other. The two military jets had now formed up on their wings, an honor guard for the remainder of their journey. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Reynolds announced, his voice rough with emotion, "we are now safely en route to London Heathrow. We're safe. We're all safe." Through the cockpit window, Naomi could see the pilot of the nearest fighter. He saluted. It was Colonel Harrison. She returned the salute, a gesture she hadn't felt entitled to make in 5 years. "So," Reynolds said, quietly beside her. "What now? You saved 200 lives. That has to count for something." Naomi looked out at the dawn breaking over the Atlantic. "Maybe," she said, "but that's not why I did it." "Then why?" "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply. "Sometimes that has to be enough." As they began their descent into Shannon Airport, diverted due to low fuel, Naomi made her way back to her seat. The cabin, once a space of terror, was now filled with an almost euphoric relief. Strangers were exchanging phone numbers, bonded for life. The Anderson family paused by her row. "Thank you. Doesn't seem like enough," Tom Anderson said, his voice thick. "Just hug your kids," Naomi replied. "That's enough." Little Emma tugged on her sleeve. "Are you a superhero?" Naomi knelt to the girl's level. "No, sweetie. I'm just someone who learned how to fly planes. But you were brave today. That makes you a hero in my book." As the plane touched down, surrounded by a sea of flashing lights, Captain Reynolds made his final announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are safely on the ground. Thank you. Your courage and cooperation saved lives today." Through the window, Naomi could see a figure standing between 2 police cars, handcuffed. Marcus Webb. Their eyes met across the tarmac. He gave a single, solemn nod. Acknowledgement, apology, farewell. Colonel Harrison was the first person up the stairs. "Outstanding work, Colonel," he said, deliberately using the rank. "I'm not a colonel anymore, sir." "About that," Harrison said, a smile touching his lips. "I've been on the phone with the Pentagon. The Secretary of the Air Force himself wants to meet with you." As passengers were escorted off the plane, each one stopped to thank her. Captain Reynolds approached, removed the wings from his own uniform, and pinned them to Naomi's hoodie. "These belong to someone who exemplifies what flying is really about," he said, Duty, courage, and bringing everyone home. On the tarmac, Harrison handed her a secure phone. Someone wants to speak with you. She took it, expecting a Pentagon official. Instead, she heard a young woman's voice. Miss Walker, my name is Amara. I was named after my aunt who died in Afghanistan 5 years ago. We just wanted to say thank you for not forgetting her. Naomi couldn't speak, overwhelmed. So, Harrison said after she'd handed the phone back. Ready to come back? The Air Force needs you. Naomi looked at the battered 777, at the passengers being reunited with loved ones on the ground, at the sunrise painting the Irish sky. She thought about Marcus, beginning his long road to justice, and the 17 souls who could finally rest in peace. Yes, she said, but on one condition. Name it.
We create a new program, a civilian military liaison. We train for this. We make sure that the threats we face don't distinguish between military and civilian, and neither do our defenses.
Harrison smiled. Already thought of that. We're calling it the Walker Protocol, and you're going to head it up. The Walker Protocol. From disgraced officer to the name on a new doctrine. Life had a strange way of balancing the scales. The woman who had boarded Flight 447, wanting only to be invisible, had found her purpose. She had been grounded for 5 years, but in the skies over the Atlantic, she had finally, truly, learned to fly again. Definitely. Wow. Okay. I think I need a second to breathe after that one. What a story.
I'm so curious to know how that landed with you guys. Let me know in the comments what you're feeling right now. And while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from. I absolutely love seeing our community pop up from all over the country, and even the world. Speaking of community, I'm sending so much love and positive energy your way. I truly hope you and your loved ones are all staying safe and well. And hey, if you have a crazy, unbelievable, or just truly beautiful story of your own that you think we need to hear, please don't be shy. Drop it in the comments below. I read them, and your story could be the one that inspires all of us next. If you enjoyed our time together today, a quick like would mean the world. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to join our little family here. We'd love to have you.
All right, that's all from me. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.